You are here because something in you was already moving long before you pressed play. Not a dramatic force, not a loud calling, but a quiet pull that formed itself inside your awareness. It began as a subtle wondering, a soft restlessness, an inner leaning towards something you couldn't yet name. And without announcing itself, that movement guided you to this moment. You didn't stumble into these words. You arrived because a deeper part of you was already opening, already listening, already shifting in ways your conscious mind has only just begun to notice. There are moments in life when information doesn't come to you as a choice. It comes as recognition. A sentence resonates before you even understand why. A message feels familiar the instant you encounter it. That familiarity isn't coincidence. It's the quiet evidence that an internal process has already started. The message becomes the mirror, reflecting what your awareness has been preparing for. That's why you're here now. Not because you sought out an explanation, but because your inner landscape is rearranging itself, and these words meet you at the exact point where that rearrangement becomes perceptible. If you pay close attention, you can sense the gentle forward motion that brought you to this moment. It's not urgency. It's not pressure. It's the feeling of something coming into view that had been waiting just behind the edges of your attention. You felt the signs in small ways, a shift in perspective, a subtle change in how certain thoughts land, a quiet awareness that something inside you has been stretching toward clarity. These signs don't announce themselves loudly. They appear like soft echoes, nudging you toward what you are meant to realize. This message didn't find you because of chance. It found you because you were already leaning in this direction. There is an intelligence within your awareness that organizes what you encounter. It draws in what matches your inner state, even when you don't consciously seek it. When the internal movement becomes strong enough, external signals begin to align with it. This is one of those signals. You wouldn't be hearing these words if some part of you weren't ready to recognize what they reflect. What's unfolding in you is simple. You're becoming aware of a shift that has been quietly forming, almost unnoticed, in small moments throughout your days. The recognition of this message is the first time that shift becomes visible to you. Not as a dramatic event, but as a gentle acknowledgement that something within you is changing direction. You're not being told to transform. You're noticing that the transformation is already underway. You don't need to force anything. You don't need to name what is happening. All you need is to allow the truth that resonates here to settle. Let it meet you where you already are. Let it confirm what you've sensed but haven't fully admitted to yourself. The reason you're here is simple: you were already shifting, and now you're finally aware of it. As night begins to gather around you, something inside you eases in a way you don't always notice. The edges of your thoughts soften. The pace of your inner world quiets, not because you force it to, but because the day begins releasing its hold on you. There is a natural unwinding that happens when the light fades, a gentle loosening of the mind's grip on everything it tried to hold together. You feel it as a slowing, a subtle drifting inward, a small invitation to let your awareness settle into deeper places. In these moments, you're not trying to understand anything. You're not searching for clarity. You're simply becoming more porous, more open to what you usually move too quickly to feel. The mind, tired from the noise and demands of the day, becomes less insistent. It doesn't push as hard. It doesn't cling as tightly. And in that easing, you begin to sense the quiet movements happening beneath the surface of your thoughts. There is something gentle about this time of evening. It softens your inner posture. It lets you release the weight you didn't even realize you were carrying. Thoughts that felt rigid earlier begin to lose their shape. Worries spread out into quieter forms. Even the emotions you struggle to name feel less defined, as if they've stepped back to give you space. This is the window opening. You may not recognize it at first, but you feel it in the calm that begins to rise around you. As the world around you dims, your inner landscape brightens. You become more aware of small sensations, subtle impressions, fleeting intuitions. They surface without effort, carried by the quiet. You begin to hear yourself more clearly, not through the voice that narrates your day, but through the deeper place that sits beneath it. This inner space is patient. It doesn't rush. It doesn't demand attention. It simply waits for you to slow down enough to notice it. This softening isn't dramatic. It doesn't arrive with intensity. It unfolds in silence, in the hush between one thought dissolving and another rising. You feel it in the way your breath smooths out, in the way your chest loosens, in the way your focus gently drifts inward without needing direction. The mind opens the way a hand unclenches, slowly, naturally, without announcement. And because you are more receptive in these moments, certain truths meet you more easily. Insights that couldn't reach you in the brightness of the day begin to find their way in. What once felt distant or abstract begins to feel familiar. It's not that answers appear out of nowhere. It's that you finally have enough inner quiet to hear the things that were already forming within you. This is the window the night brings. A moment where the boundaries inside you relax, where your awareness becomes soft enough to receive what it didn't have space for before. You're not doing anything to create this. You're simply allowing yourself to settle into a state that appears on its own. And in that settling, you open to the part of you that has been waiting to be heard. As the night deepens, your mind begins a natural descent into a quieter rhythm, one that doesn't demand effort or intention. This shift is subtle, almost imperceptible at first, yet it happens every evening in the same gentle way. Your brain moves from the heightened alertness of the day toward a softer, slower state. In that transition, something meaningful occurs. The electrical patterns in your mind begin to settle into what is known as theta, a frequency linked to intuition, imagination, and the deeper layers of awareness. You don't have to understand the science for it to touch you. You feel it as the atmosphere inside you changes. Theta is not a rare or mystical state reserved for special moments. It is a natural part of your nightly rhythm. But what makes it remarkable is the quality it brings. Thoughts become less rigid. The mind becomes less defensive. You drift into a state where the boundaries of thinking become more fluid. This doesn't pull you away from yourself. It actually draws you closer to the quieter truths that sit beneath the noise of the day. In Theta, the mind is still awake, but it is no longer trying to control everything. It allows instead of resists. It listens instead of analyzes. This shift between waking thought and the first layers of dreaming is a bridge. On one side is the logical mind, full of structure, plans, and expectations. On the other side is a more spacious awareness, where impressions rise without being filtered or judged. Theta rests between them, holding both worlds lightly. It is where imagination becomes vivid, where memories surface with clarity, and where insights emerge without being forced. Anyone who has ever felt a sudden understanding arrive as they were drifting to sleep has experienced this threshold. In these moments, you are not escaping reality. You are entering a deeper relationship with it. The mind is still functioning, still processing, but with far less tension. This is why ideas feel clearer at night, why reflections feel more honest, why the truths you avoided during the day become easier to face. The brain's activity slows just enough for you to sense the meaning beneath your thoughts. It is a state of gentle coherence, where the outer world fades and the inner world becomes more accessible. Theta doesn't ask you to participate. It simply unfolds within you, carrying you into a place where you can see with more softness. It is the doorway the mind passes through as it prepares for rest, but it also serves as a moment when deeper understanding becomes possible. Not because you force it, but because the mind finally relaxes enough to let what is already true rise to the surface. This threshold is not dramatic or loud. It is quiet, natural, and deeply human. And as you move into it each night, you step into a space where awareness opens on its own, offering you a clearer view of your inner world without effort or strain. As the night settles around you, a gentle loosening takes place inside your awareness, one that you rarely notice but always experience. The sense of who you are, your roles, your responsibilities, the thoughts that define your day, begins to soften. Not in a way that dissolves you, but in a way that gives you space. The identity you hold during the day is built from structure, from decisions, from the momentum of everything you manage. But as evening deepens, those structures ease. They don't disappear, they simply stop pressing so tightly against you. There is a moment when you are no longer held upright by the demands of the day, yet not fully surrendered to sleep. In this in-between space, the image you carry of yourself becomes less rigid. You feel it as a subtle drifting, a sense that your thoughts aren't confined to a single shape. You can look at yourself more softly, without the pressure to define or defend anything. It is as though the edges of your identity blur just enough to let something quieter breathe beneath it. This unanchoring isn't a loss. It is a release. During the day, you move from thought to thought with purpose, building a narrative that keeps you aligned with everything you believe you must be. But at night, that narrative pauses. You are no longer performing yourself. You are simply being. And in that simplicity, the identity you wear becomes lighter. It steps back, allowing deeper parts of you to rise without resistance. You might feel it when your reflections take on a different tone, when questions that felt heavy now feel gentle, or when emotions you carried throughout the day soften into something more spacious. The self that struggles to keep everything in place relaxes. You're not trying to prove anything to yourself. You're not trying to uphold a story. You're resting in the truth that you don't have to hold it all right now. At night, the mind allows you to see yourself without the constant reinforcement of habit. Thoughts move slower. Judgments weaken. The sense of who you must be loosens, and you find yourself drifting into a more fluid awareness. This is why you can revisit the same thought you had earlier and suddenly feel differently about it. It isn't that the thought changed. It's that the identity you used to interpret it is no longer as tightly gripped. This softening is safe. It is natural. It happens because your inner world needs space to breathe. When identity relaxes, even for a moment, you can sense parts of yourself that remain hidden in the brightness of the day. These parts aren't asking for attention, they are simply becoming easier to feel. In this quiet, you gain access to a version of you that isn't built from expectations, but from something deeper and more honest. This temporary unanchoring is not a moment of losing yourself. It is a moment of meeting yourself without the noise. It gives you room to feel who you are beneath the patterns and postures of the day. And in that gentle opening, something true inside you has space to emerge. There are moments at night when your inner world feels unsettled in a way you can't fully explain. Thoughts drift in and out with no clear pattern. Old memories surface without warning. Emotions rise in soft waves, not intense enough to overwhelm you, yet present enough to make you pause. This turbulence doesn't mean something is wrong. It means something inside you is shifting into place. The quiet hours often bring a kind of internal movement that you don't notice during the day, because the noise of life keeps it buried beneath distraction. As evening deepens, your mind begins to sort through everything it held onto without processing. The small tensions you pushed aside, the unspoken feelings, the unfinished thoughts, all of them come forward, not to trouble you, but to be understood and released. This is your subconscious organizing itself, clearing space, making sense of the impressions you gathered throughout the day. It is a natural cycle, one that happens without effort, one that continues whether or not you pay attention. You might feel this as a strange heaviness, or a sudden lightness. You might feel oddly alert, or unusually calm. You might drift between thoughts without knowing why each one arrives. This is the mind rearranging its inner landscape, smoothing out what has been jagged, softening what has been tense, loosening what has been tightly held. It is a quiet housekeeping, subtle but meaningful, guided by a deeper intelligence that knows what needs to rise and what needs to settle. Nothing in this process asks anything from you. You don't need to intervene. You don't need to interpret every feeling that surfaces. The subconscious doesn't reorganize itself through analysis. It reorganizes through release, through gentle reconciliation, through allowing what was stored to move into a state where it no longer needs to be carried. When you feel the mind drifting at night, it is not losing focus. It is clearing out the remnants of the day so you can enter tomorrow with more space. Sometimes this reorganization feels like restlessness. Sometimes it feels like reflection. Sometimes it feels like a strange clarity that emerges and fades without explanation. All of these experiences are part of the same natural rhythm. They are signs that your inner world is sorting itself out, preparing the ground for deeper calm, making room for new thoughts to grow without being tangled in the old ones. There is nothing dramatic happening here. It is quiet work, done beneath the surface, done with a kind of precision you may never consciously notice. But you feel the effects. You feel them in the relief that comes after the turbulence passes, in the sense of lightness that arrives unexpectedly, in the way your thoughts seem to settle into a gentler state than before. This is your subconscious completing what the day didn't have time to finish. Let this process happen. Let it unfold without resistance. The turbulence is simply movement, and movement is simply clearing. In the stillness of night, your inner world finds its own way back to balance, giving you a kind of quiet renewal that rises naturally from within. There are certain moments in life that feel like quiet crossings, even when nothing visible shifts around you. Midnight is one of those moments. It carries a weight that isn't loud or dramatic, but unmistakably present. Humans have always sensed something in thresholds, the turning of a day, the closing of a season, the first breath of a new beginning. These transitions mark places where the familiar pauses, and the unknown moves a little closer. You feel it not because something external changes, but because these moments invite you inward, into a softer kind of awareness. Midnight is a line drawn in silence. One day ends, another begins, and yet the world looks exactly the same. The power lies not in the change itself, but in the meaning you give it. Throughout history, people have gathered significance around thresholds. Sunsets, birthdays, the beginning of a year, the moment before sleep, all of these carry a sense of turning. They create openings where reflection rises naturally, where the mind feels ready to release what came before and quietly make room for what comes next. This is why midnight feels like more than just a time on a clock. It's a symbol your inner world responds to. As the last minutes of the day slip away, something inside you acknowledges the ending. Even if you're not thinking about it consciously, you feel the subtle pull of closure. You sense the completion of a cycle. And with that, a small space opens within you. This space is gentle, unforced, and deeply human. It allows your thoughts to settle differently, your emotions to breathe more freely, your awareness to stretch just enough to feel the possibility of renewal. Thresholds matter because they create psychological permission. When a moment feels symbolic, you naturally open to the idea that change is possible. Not dramatic change. Not sudden reinvention. But the kind of quiet shift that begins as a whisper, a slight turn inward, a soft recognition that you are stepping out of one moment and into another. Midnight carries that permission. It gives you a point to lean into, a place where the mind feels allowed to reset. You might notice this in the way your reflections deepen at the end of the day. Thoughts seem to fold themselves differently. Feelings gain a little more clarity. You look at yourself with a softness that wasn't available earlier. You let go of certain tension simply because the day is ending, and endings invite release. Midnight marks that release, even if you're not fully aware of it. It stands as a quiet doorway between what has been and what will be. These thresholds are not about rituals or decisions. They're about the natural rhythm of being human. They are points in time when your inner world becomes more receptive, more reflective, more open to the subtle movements that guide you forward. Midnight doesn't create change. It allows you to recognize the space where change can land. And in that recognition, something inside you shifts in a way that feels both gentle and unmistakably real. There is a certain feeling that tends to rise toward the end of the day, a feeling you can't always name but always recognize. It's that quiet sense that something inside you is preparing to move, even if nothing in your outer world has changed. You've felt it before, a soft anticipation, a stillness that isn't empty, a subtle awareness that you are standing in a moment that feels slightly different from the rest. It doesn't announce itself loudly. It appears the way dusk appears, slowly, gently, almost shyly. Yet when it does, you know it. This feeling isn't anxiety, though it can resemble it. It isn't excitement, though it carries the same gentle spark. It's something between them, something like an internal readiness. As the day winds down, your mind stops gripping so tightly. You move through your thoughts with less urgency. You begin to sense the spaces between them. And in those spaces, a quiet expectation grows. Not the expectation that something dramatic will happen, but the expectation that something inside you is shifting its position, preparing to show you a truth you weren't able to see earlier. This is why evenings often feel more reflective. Your awareness settles. Your inner world becomes less crowded. There is room for small realizations to surface. You feel closer to yourself, not because you try to be, but because the noise around you finally loosens its hold. In that loosening, the subtle shift becomes visible. It's a sensation many people overlook, yet you've always sensed it. You've felt nights where your thoughts seemed to rearrange themselves softly, where the air around you felt charged with possibility, where your inner voice felt clearer than it had all day. If you're feeling that now, it's not accidental. It means you're attuning to the part of you that recognizes movements before they fully arrive. That quiet expectation is a sign that your inner world is preparing to settle into a new arrangement. It isn't a task. It isn't a decision. It's a natural alignment, something that happens when your mind grows still enough to feel what has been forming beneath the surface. And if these words resonate with that feeling, if you can sense that subtle shift within you, it can be grounding to acknowledge it. Sometimes acknowledging resonance helps it settle more deeply. If you feel that this is meeting you at the right moment, gently tap the like button as a way of saying yes to the recognition already happening in you. Not as a gesture toward the video, but as a quiet confirmation of what you feel unfolding. This expectation of change isn't about predicting anything. It's about noticing the atmosphere inside you when something is becoming real. You've experienced this before in other moments of your life, when you sensed a shift long before you could describe it. That same feeling is here now, soft and steady. Let it be simple. Let it be quiet. Let it be enough that you can sense it. The change you're feeling doesn't need to be understood yet. It only needs to be acknowledged. There is a quiet power in the way you notice things. Not the dramatic kind, not the kind that tries to shape the world by force, but the kind that shifts the atmosphere inside you the moment your attention rests on something. Awareness has a way of touching the world without needing to move it. When you observe a thought, a feeling, or a possibility with a certain softness, it begins to change simply because you are seeing it differently. This isn't effort. It isn't intention. It is the natural influence of presence. When you look at something with clear attention, the noise around it falls away. What remains is the truth of what is actually there. You've experienced this many times without naming it. A thought that seemed heavy becomes lighter when you truly look at it. An emotion that felt tangled becomes understandable when you allow yourself to feel it. Even possibilities that once felt distant begin to move closer when your awareness settles on them without resistance. The act of noticing reshapes the landscape of your inner world. Awareness doesn't demand answers. It doesn't ask you to make decisions. It simply reveals what has been hidden beneath distraction. And when something becomes visible, it begins to shift. Not because you push it to, but because clarity always rearranges what it touches. A possibility observed becomes more real. A thought acknowledged loses its grip. A feeling seen becomes softer. In this way, awareness becomes a quiet force that reorganizes your experience. You might think of moments when you paused long enough to understand something you had overlooked. The situation didn't change. You did. The simple act of observing from a place of openness altered how it lived inside you. This is the subtle empowerment that awareness brings. It turns confusion into coherence, heaviness into space, distance into closeness. It does all of this without drama, without pressure, without needing to be named. When you look inward with clarity, you create room for your inner world to shift into a new arrangement. Possibilities that felt unreachable earlier in the day begin to make sense. Challenges that felt overwhelming become manageable. Directions you hadn't considered before begin to appear. None of this comes from forcing a new path. It comes from seeing the moment you are in with enough honesty that new pathways begin to form naturally. This gentle influence happens in the smallest ways. A thought meets your awareness and softens. A feeling meets your awareness and settles. A possibility meets your awareness and takes shape. The more clearly you see, the more clearly your life begins to respond. Not all at once. Not dramatically. But in small, undeniable steps. Awareness doesn't rewrite your entire world in a single moment. It rewrites the way you stand within it. And when the way you stand changes, the possibilities available to you shift as well. This is the quiet power you carry, the influence that comes only from noticing with presence. In these moments, you begin to sense how simply being aware can open a new direction without forcing anything at all. There is a moment when you begin to realize that the change you've been sensing isn't something that will happen later. It has already begun. It has been unfolding quietly in the background of your days, gathering itself in small ways you may not have noticed until now. The shift doesn't announce its arrival. It builds itself through subtle adjustments in how you think, how you perceive, how you respond to the world around you. And when you pause long enough to look inward, you can feel that something has been moving for some time. You may have noticed it in gentle moments, an unexpected clarity, a soft release, a slight change in what feels important. These moments might have seemed isolated, but they weren't. They were pieces of a larger movement, signs that your inner world has already begun to reorient itself. Your awareness is simply catching up to what has been forming beneath the surface. The shift doesn't require effort from you. It doesn't demand that you force a new path. It progresses naturally, guided by a deeper intelligence that knows when you're ready to see what has been growing inside you. It's like noticing a new pattern in your thoughts that wasn't there before, or feeling a softness in places where you once felt tension. These are not beginnings. They are continuations of something that has been unfolding without needing your permission. As you listen now, you may feel a quiet recognition rising. A sense that these words aren't introducing something new, but naming something you have already been living. That recognition is important. It shows you that the shift isn't a future event. It is the present moment revealing itself more clearly. And if this resonates, if you feel that what's unfolding in you tends to meet you at the exact moment you're ready for it, consider subscribing, not as a routine action, but as a way of staying connected to guidance that seems to arrive at the right time. Think of it as aligning yourself with the reminders that meet you when your inner world is ready to hear them. Only do so if you feel that sense of alignment, that quiet yes that comes from within rather than from obligation. This shift will continue to deepen with or without your attention, because it began long before you named it. What you're doing now is simply becoming aware of its movement. Awareness brings clarity. Clarity brings steadiness. Steadiness helps the shift settle more fully into your life. You don't need to push anything forward. You don't need to rush. You only need to recognize what is already in motion. When you acknowledge the shift, even softly, it becomes easier to trust its direction. You begin to feel more at ease in the changes rising within you. You begin to understand that this moment is not the start of something new, but the moment you finally see what has been unfolding all along. There are moments when you feel a quiet pull toward a version of yourself you can't yet describe. It doesn't come as a vision or a plan. It comes as a gentle leaning, a sense that something ahead of you is already aware of your arrival. This feeling isn't dramatic. It doesn't demand your attention. It approaches the way a soft light reaches you before you see its source, hinting at a presence you can sense long before you understand it. You might notice it when a thought appears that feels slightly wiser than what you're used to hearing from yourself. Or when a calm certainty rises without explanation, as if a part of you that stands further along the path has quietly stepped closer. It's not a message. It's not guidance in the way you might imagine. It's more like an impression, a faint outline of a self that already knows where you're heading. And when you feel it, even briefly, something inside you softens in recognition. This presence doesn't speak in words. It communicates through subtle shifts in your awareness. A moment of unexpected clarity. A gentle reassurance that arrives without being asked for. A sense of calm that feels borrowed from a place you haven't reached yet. These moments feel familiar because they come from a version of you that already holds what you're moving toward. You're not meeting something external. You're brushing against the edges of who you're becoming. At night, when everything grows quieter and the world places fewer demands on your attention, this presence becomes easier to sense. Not because it suddenly appears, but because you finally have the stillness to feel it. It's like noticing a distant echo in a room that was too loud all day. The silence reveals what was always there, waiting patiently for you to slow down enough to perceive it. This feeling doesn't have to be interpreted. You don't need to turn it into a story or search for meaning. Its purpose isn't to guide you step by step. Its purpose is to remind you that you are not moving toward an unknown future. You are moving toward a self that already exists within you, a self that communicates in the simplest ways, through intuition, through subtle confidence, through the sense that certain choices feel more aligned than others without needing explanation. The future self does not force direction. It doesn't pull or push. It offers a quiet companionship. It stands as a presence just slightly ahead, illuminating your path by the way it feels rather than by the details it reveals. You sense it in moments when something feels right without needing proof, or when a choice feels peaceful before you understand why. These are the soft traces of a self you haven't fully grown into but are already connected to. Let this presence remain subtle. Let it be atmospheric, something you sense rather than define. You don't need to reach for it. You only need to allow it to exist in your awareness. The more gently you acknowledge it, the more naturally it comes into view, offering you small glimpses of a direction you were already moving toward long before you noticed it. There is a moment when the right words arrive at the right time, and something inside you responds before your mind knows why. It isn't excitement. It isn't surprise. It's recognition. A quiet yes that rises from a place deeper than thought. When you feel that, you're not reacting to information. You're resonating with something that mirrors where you already are. This resonance doesn't push you forward. It aligns you with the clarity that was already forming within you, waiting for a single point of contact to bring it into focus. As you listen now, you may notice a subtle settling happening inside you. A soft coherence. A sense that these words aren't adding anything new, but revealing something you had already begun to understand. That feeling is alignment. It's the moment your inner state and the message before you meet each other at the same frequency. You don't need to force this. You don't need to chase it. It happens naturally when something outside you reflects what has been quietly preparing within. Resonance works in silence. You don't feel it as a surge. You feel it as clarity. A thought that once felt scattered suddenly makes sense. A feeling that stayed in the background steps gently into view. The noise around your awareness fades just enough for a truth to land. When this happens, you aren't being changed. You are being reminded. You are being brought into contact with the part of you that already knows what these words are pointing toward. This is why certain messages meet you at certain times. Not because they are powerful on their own, but because you have reached a moment where they can act as a tuning fork for the clarity rising inside you. They activate what is already present, helping it organize itself, helping it take shape. You feel it as a shift in your inner atmosphere, a softening of resistance, a quiet acceptance of what feels unmistakably true. Alignment doesn't require effort. It asks only for recognition. When you hear something that resonates, it creates a small opening inside you, a place where your awareness can settle without tension. This settling is where clarity forms. You begin to see what you couldn't see an hour ago. You begin to understand what was lingering just beyond your awareness. It's not that the message changed you. It's that it met you at the exact moment your inner world became ready to reveal something. Right now, as you absorb these words, you're not moving toward clarity. You're syncing with it. The resonance you feel is the sensation of matching your inner state with a truth that already belongs to you. The message simply accelerates the process by making what is subtle more visible, more reachable, more felt. Nothing is being imposed on you. Nothing is being asked of you. You are allowing yourself to come into coherence with what has been quietly forming inside you for longer than you realized. This is how alignment unfolds. Not through effort, but through recognition. Not through striving, but through resonance. And in this moment, that recognition is already happening. There are moments when you notice small shifts inside yourself long before you understand what they mean. A quiet feeling that rises without reason. A gentle pull towards something you can't name. A softness in your reactions where there used to be tension. These signs often appear in the background, subtle enough that you might overlook them, yet consistent enough that you know they're not random. They arrive like whispers from your own depths, hints that your inner world is reorganizing itself in ways you're just beginning to feel. You might sense it when a thought that once troubled you loses its weight, or when an emotion moves through you more smoothly than before. Sometimes it's the way you pause longer before reacting, or the way you notice details you used to pass by. Sometimes it's a calm that appears for no clear reason, a sense of steadiness that feels new yet strangely familiar. These signs don't need interpretation. They don't need to be sorted into categories or turned into conclusions. They are simply expressions of something within you settling into a clearer shape. There are evenings when you feel more open, more reflective, more in tune with the quieter movements inside you. You may not know why, but you feel yourself becoming more aware of the subtleties of your own inner landscape. A thought that rises gently and fades just as quietly. A feeling that sits beside you rather than pressing into you. These experiences are signs of an internal shift, not in identity or direction, but in the way your awareness is relating to itself. As you listen to these words, you might notice that some of these signs have already been present in your life. Perhaps you've felt a slight change in how you hold certain emotions. Perhaps you've noticed moments of clarity emerging in spaces where confusion used to sit. These small movements are meaningful. They are the subtle indicators that your inner world is responding to a deeper coherence beginning to unfold. If you feel any of these signs within you, even faintly, it can help to acknowledge them. Recognition strengthens what is already rising. Let yourself notice the small things, the gentler breath, the softer reaction, the unexpected sense of understanding. These are not dramatic shifts. They are quiet, honest reflections of the way your inner experience is evolving. And if you feel called to, share what signs you've been noticing in the comments. Not as a performance, but as an act of self-recognition. Naming what you feel can help you see it more clearly. It can also remind someone else that their subtle experiences are valid too. Only share if it feels natural, if it feels like an extension of the awareness you're touching right now. These signs don't need to lead anywhere. They don't need to signal anything beyond themselves. They are simply reminders that your inner world is alive, responsive and continuously unfolding. Let them be what they are, gentle notes from within, guiding you toward a deeper understanding of your own experience, one quiet moment at a time. There is a kind of strength that doesn't come from effort or determination, but from the quiet way you place your attention. When you focus gently on something within you, not to control it but simply to witness it, a natural steadiness begins to form. Attention becomes a grounding presence. It settles the noise without force, the way calm water softens the ripples around it. In these moments, your awareness becomes a stabilizing field, allowing your inner world to rest in a clearer shape. Conscious attention isn't about holding on tightly. It's about allowing yourself to notice what is here without rushing past it. When you bring your awareness to a thought, it slows. When you bring it to a feeling, it becomes easier to hold. When you bring it to the present moment, even briefly, something inside you quietly aligns. This alignment isn't dramatic. It doesn't come with a sudden realization. It unfolds through small moments where you let your attention rest without trying to change anything. There are times when your inner experience feels scattered, when thoughts move quickly and emotions tangle themselves together. In those moments, attention acts like a soft anchor. Not to pull you down, but to keep you from drifting too far away from yourself. When you pause long enough to simply be aware, your inner world begins to settle on its own. You don't need to sort through anything. You don't need to understand each piece. Just noticing is enough to create a sense of order. This is the quiet power of attention. It brings coherence where there was fragmentation. It brings calm where there was restlessness. It brings clarity where there was noise. And it does all of this without requiring any effort beyond presence. You don't have to hold your attention for long. Even a brief moment of awareness can shift the feeling of an entire experience. The more gently you place your attention, the more naturally things soften. A thought that felt heavy becomes lighter when you look at it with calm. An emotion that felt overwhelming becomes manageable when you acknowledge it without resistance. Attention doesn't fix anything. It allows things to find their own balance. Your inner world becomes a little more stable each time you simply pause and notice what is happening within you. There is a stillness that rises when you do this. It isn't silence. It isn't emptiness. It's a kind of inner spaciousness, where you can feel yourself existing without pressure. You might sense it in your breath slowing, or in the way your chest loosens, or in the way your thoughts start to spread out instead of crowding together. This stillness isn't something you create. It appears when you stop trying to manage everything and allow your attention to rest naturally. As you move through these moments, you begin to understand that attention is not a tool. It's a presence. A presence that supports your inner world without controlling it. A presence that invites things to settle into their true state. When you give your awareness gently, without expectation, you create the conditions for calm to take shape within you. And in that calm, you find a steadiness that stays with you long after the moment has passed. There is a moment, often toward the end of the day, when your thoughts begin to move differently. The world around you grows quieter, and the space within you expands just enough for reflection to take shape. In that quiet, you begin to see your experiences not as fixed moments, but as stories you continue to interpret. It's in this gentle act of looking back that tomorrow begins to form. Not because anything external has changed, but because the meaning you give to your experiences subtly shifts the direction of what comes next. Reflection isn't about examining every detail. It's about noticing the feeling that lingers after the day settles. A conversation that felt heavier than it needed to. A moment of ease that you didn't expect. A choice you made without thinking twice. When you revisit these moments with a calm mind, you realize that their impact isn't final. The way you interpret them now shapes how they live in you. A thought that once felt sharp can soften. A difficulty can transform into understanding. A small success can become a quiet source of strength. The meaning evolves as you look at it through a clearer lens. The mind naturally reinterprets the day as it winds down. It takes the fragments, the impressions, the unfinished emotions, and begins placing them in a new order. This reordering isn't deliberate. It happens in the background, guided by the way you reflect. When you look back with gentleness, the harshness fades. When you look back with honesty, clarity emerges. When you look back with openness, the day reveals lessons you didn't notice at the time. This soft reorganization influences how you step into the next moment. There is a quiet power in choosing how you interpret the day before it becomes memory. When you give yourself even a small moment of reflection, you create space for understanding to settle. You are no longer responding from habit. You are responding from awareness. And that awareness shapes the tone of your tomorrow. If you choose to see something with compassion, that compassion carries forward. If you choose to release something that felt heavy, that release becomes the foundation for the next day's ease. Interpretation becomes a quiet author of the future. You don't need to reflect with intention or structure. Simply sitting with what the day brought you, even for a few breaths, begins the process. The mind softens around the experiences it struggled with. It brightens around the experiences that supported you. It gathers your impressions and gently weaves them into a narrative that feels more aligned with who you are in this moment. And in doing so, it writes the opening lines of the day ahead. Reflection is not about rewriting the past. It is about feeling the present more clearly. When you allow yourself to see the day with softness, you naturally step into tomorrow with a different kind of steadiness. It's not a decision, and it's not a plan. It is a quiet unfolding, a subtle shift in the direction your awareness takes. And that shift, however small, becomes the starting point for everything that follows. There is a point, often so subtle you barely notice it, when something inside you settles into place. It doesn't arrive with intensity. It doesn't arrive with certainty. It arrives as a small shift in the way your inner world arranges itself. A thought that once pulled you in different directions suddenly feels clear. A feeling that hovered without form gently finds its center. A quiet coherence takes shape, not because you chose it, but because something within you has finally reached a place of rest. This inner click is not dramatic. It doesn't announce itself. It is more like the soft sound of a door closing in another room, a signal that a movement has completed itself. You sense it rather than hear it. You feel it as the easing of an inner tension you may not have realized you were holding. The mind grows still for a moment, not empty, but steady. The restlessness that circled your awareness begins to fade. You aren't making anything happen. You're simply witnessing a natural settling. Sometimes this click comes after a day of questions that never found answers. Sometimes it comes after a moment of unexpected clarity. Sometimes it comes without any clear cause, in the quiet spaces between thoughts. It arrives when the inner pieces that have been drifting for a while finally fit into a shape that feels true. You don't force them together. They move on their own, aligning in a way that feels inevitable only after it happens. What makes this moment unique is the feeling that follows. Not a surge, not a revelation, but a calm recognition. You feel more rooted inside yourself. Your thoughts lose their urgency. Your emotions feel held rather than scattered. You aren't reaching outward for direction. You're noticing that something within you has already found it. This is the click, the instant when your inner world becomes coherent enough for you to feel your own steadiness. You may notice that your breath deepens without trying. Your chest loosens. Your attention feels anchored, not because you're holding it, but because it has found its own place to rest. There is a soft alignment in your awareness, as if you have quietly stepped into a version of yourself that you were drifting toward all along. Nothing external has changed. But the way you inhabit this moment has. This click doesn't need to be analyzed. It doesn't need to be chased. The more gently you acknowledge it, the more fully it settles. It is not a sign that everything is resolved. It is a sign that you have reached a level of inner clarity that allows you to move forward with greater ease. You don't need to understand why it arrived. You don't need to hold on to it. You only need to let it be what it is, a brief and honest confirmation that something within you has aligned. In these small moments of inner coherence, you meet a deeper stillness. A stillness that doesn't remove uncertainty, but softens your relationship with it. A stillness that lets you feel grounded without explanation. And as you rest in that stillness, you begin to sense that this alignment isn't something you created. It's something you finally noticed. As the night deepens and the noise of the day begins to fall away, something inside you starts to rearrange itself in a way that's almost invisible. Nothing dramatic occurs. Nothing announces itself. Yet you can feel a quiet shift taking place, a subtle reorientation that changes the way you see yourself. It doesn't come from a thought you choose or an insight you force. It unfolds naturally, the way a room feels different when the lights dim and your eyes adjust without trying. Before midnight, you begin to meet yourself with a different kind of softness. The judgments that held their grip earlier seem to loosen. The expectations you placed on yourself fade into the background. You find yourself looking at your own experience with a little more spaciousness, a little more understanding. This is the beginning of the shift. Not a change in who you are, but a change in how you relate to yourself. You begin to inhabit the present moment with more honesty, and that honesty opens a path for quiet transformation. It often happens in the smallest moments. You reflect on something that troubled you, and it feels less sharp. You remember a mistake, and it no longer defines you. You think about what you want, and it feels closer than it did before. These are not signs of a new identity. They are signs of a clearer perception. When the day releases its hold, you see yourself without the layers of noise that clouded your view. You see yourself as you are, and that simple recognition shifts the atmosphere within you. This shift doesn't ask you to become anything. It doesn't require action or a declaration. It happens because your mind and your emotions finally have room to breathe. When the inner world relaxes, even slightly, you can sense the difference. You respond to your own thoughts with more gentleness. You hold your emotions with more patience. You allow yourself to exist without the pressure to improve or perform. In that stillness, your perception naturally reorganizes into something more balanced and true. What actually changes before midnight is not your path, not your future, not the circumstances around you. What changes is the way you interpret yourself within them. You begin to notice possibilities where before you saw limits. You begin to feel capable in places where you once felt uncertain. You begin to sense a quiet openness that wasn't available earlier in the day. This openness becomes the foundation for everything that follows. When you see yourself differently, your experience begins to reflect that difference in subtle, meaningful ways. This shift is gentle enough to miss if you're not paying attention. It doesn't rush. It doesn't demand recognition. It moves through you the way night moves through a room, softly, gradually, with a steadying presence. And when you feel it, even faintly, you realize that the real transformation is not something arriving from outside. It is something unfolding from within, reshaping the way you view yourself moment by moment. Before midnight, what shifts is the lens through which you meet your own experience. And when that lens clears, even slightly, the entire landscape of your life begins to take on a different hue, one that feels truer, gentler, and more aligned with who you have quietly been becoming all along. There is a quiet moment at the end of all reflection, all softening, all inner movement, when you have nothing left to do but allow what has unfolded within you to settle. This is not a moment of effort. It isn't a practice, or a technique, or a structured pause. It is simply an opening, a gentle space in which you acknowledge what you already feel. Acceptance does not require words. It doesn't require understanding. It is the stillness that rises when you stop trying to shape the moment and let it be what it is. As you sit here now, you might notice the subtle clarity that has formed inside you. Not a conclusion, not a realization, but a sense of calm that comes from having met your inner world with honesty. It doesn't matter whether everything makes sense. It doesn't matter whether anything has changed. What matters is that you are present with yourself in a way that feels softer and more grounded than before. This presence is the beginning of acceptance. Let your attention rest gently on your breath for a moment, not to change it, but to feel it. The natural rise, the natural fall. This simple noticing anchors you in the only place that is truly real, the moment you are in. Acceptance begins with this kind of awareness, the kind that doesn't reach or resist. It allows whatever you feel to exist without needing to become something else. There is a quiet truth in recognizing that you don't have to force anything. The shift you sense doesn't need to be held tightly. It doesn't need to be analyzed or turned into action. It only needs to be acknowledged. A simple inward nod. A gentle recognition that something within you has settled in a way that feels steady and honest. This acknowledgement is the ritual. Nothing more. As you rest in this awareness, you may feel a softening across your chest, a loosening in your shoulders, a sense of spaciousness around your thoughts. These sensations are not signals to interpret. They are simply reflections of the calm that acceptance allows. When you stop trying to move the moment forward, the moment reveals its own kind of peace. Let yourself be here without expectation. Let the quiet wrap around you without needing to name it. Acceptance is not a conclusion. It is an atmosphere. It is the feeling of letting yourself be held by the present without wishing it to be different. In this space, the shift you've experienced finds a place to rest. It becomes part of you, woven gently into your awareness without effort. If there is anything lingering in your mind, meet it with the same softness. Let it be part of the moment without pushing it away. The calm you feel does not depend on removing anything. It comes from allowing everything to be as it is. This is the essence of acceptance, a quiet willingness to let your inner world settle into its natural shape. As you breathe here, in this gentle stillness, you close the chapter not with finality, but with presence. Nothing more is needed. You have arrived exactly where you are meant to be, in a moment of quiet truth, held by the simplicity of your own acceptance.